and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Darryl Grove. I'm a designated player. I'm joined by a man who there's nothing base about his salary and he always guarantees compensation. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I think that's good. I think that's all good things.
It's MLS player salary reveal day.
It is.
Sort of like they open a cake.
Everyone's favorite holiday.
Yep. You open a cake and you find out how much your teammates earn.
Yep. And if you're the person on the bottom of the list, which is, I think is like a 15-way tie, maybe you up your game a little bit.
Actually, some of the guys earning the minimum, it makes sense, and it's actually a good amount of money. I'm thinking of Jesus Ferreira at FC Dallas, who is, 17 now?
Decent money.
If I was making 50-something thousand at 17 for playing soccer, I'd be happy.
I think I probably would be, too.
I'd be happy to go on loan to Tulsa Roughnecks, which is what just happened to him.
There's a chance I might be happy to be making that right now. So, there you go.
Well, let's do some more ads.
All right.
Did anything
it's the all-ad show today.
Did anything jump out at you looking at the MLS player salary list? We're not going to do a whole thing on it. We've got listener questions, but I just wondered if
the only thing that I thought was pretty telling, or not even telling, just pretty fascinating, is the fact that if you look at the bottom in terms of both guaranteed and I think base salaries, some of the teams that are at the bottom, not that surprising. But I think fifth bottom is the New York Red Bulls, which is pretty surprising to me.
And weirdly, so all I did was have a quick scroll through, and I was interested in the Red Bulls because they've got so many young Americans playing. And I looked at that and thought, oh, they're getting some really good deals there. Really good deals. Like Derek Etienne for 70-something, Tyler Adams for 150.
Yeah.
Those are bargains.
It's almost like if you actually utilize your academy effectively, you can get bargain players.
You got to spend money to pay people less in the future.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how it works, right? That's the common saying.
The other big thing I want to mention before we get into questions is congratulations to Huddersfield Town Football Club. I will be watching every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation to celebrate.
I forgot. I genuinely panicked for a moment because when Huddersfield went up, there were all of the videos and photos of Sir Patrick Stewart, celebrating, and I have not seen as many of those when they stayed up. And I did have a momentary, he's still alive, right? He's definitely still alive? Yes. Jean-Luc is still with us?
Very much alive.
Right.
Very much alive.
I did enjoy our friend Pav, who hopefully will be making an appearance sometime in the near future.
That was the deal, right? If Huddersfield stay up, he'll come on the show and play the Wikipedia game?
I'm going to say this now. I'm going to get him to admit that David Wagner is American. Because he's not David Wagner, he's David Wagner. That's what he prefers to be called. And yet every time I have a text exchange with Pav, if Huddersfield have lost or haven't looked good, then David Wagner is American. But if they look good, for example, the day they stayed up, he was 100% German, according to Pav. So that's going to have to be rectified.
We will settle this in the near future.
In the Octagon?
Or maybe...
I would lose that.
The Octagon? This room's square.
Yeah.
You should not enter the Octagon with Pav.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to say that. Also, congratulations to Detroit City FC.
Yeah,
and if you know about this,
I did.
US Open Cup. They beat the Michigan Bucks on penalty kicks. They go through to the next round where they will play FC Cincinnati.
There we go.
That's a big team for Detroit City FC to be playing against Cincinnati, I believe.
It is indeed. So well done to them. Commiserations to Christos FC, who were the darlings of last year's tournament, eliminated in penalty kicks. Had they won, they would have played the Richmond Kickers yet again.
So the Richmond Kickers will be relieved that they don't have to play Christos FC again.
I hope not, but maybe.
I believe the winner of that tie was Reading, so they will play the Richmond Kickers. Okay.
Yeah.
We can't list all the Open Cup results, but those are the two that caught my eye, at least. Ready for the questions?
I'm ready for the questions.
We have many, many questions. First question comes from Joey Jadlowski. Joey says, there is an ever-present debate about the handball rule. The definition by FIFA seems to limit it to a very limited set of circumstances. Quote, handling the ball involves a deliberate act of a player making contact with the ball with his hand or arm, unquote. Joey asks, if FIFA were to consult the fine folks at the Total Soccer Show, we don't have any fine folks, so I guess it would have to be us, on how to rewrite the handball rule so that it is clear and fair to the spirit of the game and to help minimise the debate on what is or isn't a handball offence, how would you define a handball? What would the rule be?
All right. For me, the rule would be, I've got my acronym here, IKIWISI. IKIWISI.
That is a not very easy to remember acronym.
It will be in a moment because
IKIWISI?
I'm gonna IKIWISI.
Okay.
IKIWISI. Because I'm going to go the logical route here, and I'm going to quote Justice Potter Stewart's threshold test for obscenity in Jacobellis v. Ohio, which is the obscenity.
I know what's coming.
You know what it is?
Is it I know it when I see it?
There it is. That is kind of where I go with, because he has a great line in there where he essentially, I'm not going to do the exact quote, Maybe I will. But he says, perhaps I could never succeed in intelligibly doing so. That is, like, succinctly defining it, but I know it when I see it. And that is sort of how I feel about the handball rule. So if they were to ask me that, the official rule would be, I know it when I see it, icky-weesy.
Icky-weesy. I think I like it, but isn't that what's going on right now? Because it's only the referee icky-weeses it, everybody else icky-weeses it, and that's why we all have disagreements. Aren't we looking for common ground
But
here?
see, the thing is, there is no common ground. I really genuinely believe that no matter what you do, when you start to like make hard and firm rules, you're always going to annoy people. Because number one, some people don't like hard and firm rules, but number two, you're then giving people...
Like anarchists, for example.
Yeah, exactly. But then also, or I mean this sincerely, not the hard and firm rules part, but like I've said this before on the show, I think, but like lawyers, when you make a hard and firm rule, that then opens it up to interpretation. So if you say, oh, his hand was raised, that means it's definitely a handball. Oh, but his hand was only raised because he was sliding and it was actually below his head. So it's not like, it goes into all these interpretations.
At what angle is it raised versus not
exactly.
raised? Yeah.
And so it's still, even with hard defined rules.
The answer's 45 degrees.
Obviously. But even with hard and like defined rules, I feel like you still have all of this ground for interpretation and argument. And I guess I almost would rather it be murky and then it be that the refs have to maybe explain themselves. That if it is a controversial decision, they have to like maybe just issue like a one-paragraph explanation as to why it was a penalty.
Okay, so all that is very interesting, but I'm actually going to answer Joey's question. And I'm going to say a way to make it clear and fair so we can all agree on it and there's less minimize the debate about what isn't a handball.
The question was, how would you define a handball? And I'm saying, I know it when I see it. I have answered that question.
I would help minimize the debate on what is or isn't. I'm just giving you a hard time. I like your answer. On what is or isn't a handball, I would say if it touches your hand or arm below the shoulder, it's a handball.
Well, that should do it. That should simplify things.
It would definitely simplify things.
I guess.
Right? So it doesn't matter if you your arms were in a natural position or it was accidental, it was just kicked into you. If it hits your hand or arm below the shoulder, it is handball. That is the rule. Hard and fast rule.
Now, here's what I'm curious about.
Okay.
So we discussed this question yesterday. You
bit of a preview
promulgated this idea, and my immediate response was, and so if you're on a wall inside the 18 and someone takes a free kick and hits you in the hand, that would then technically be a handball according to your rule.
Well,
so I'm going to assume that you have adjusted this to anticipate that reaction.
I have written down, defensive walls are for the brave.
Wow. All right. Then you got to live. If you're gonna promote this idea, you got to live this idea. Next time I see you in a wall,
okay,
you better just be like hands behind your back.
I will actually defend this. I have been in many defensive walls.
Yep.
11 aside and indoor. Lots of indoor walls. Right. You're in like 4 a game. Right. I have never had what we're thinking about happen to me when facing a free kick. Like I do what everybody else does, and I cover my nether regions with my hand or my arm to protect myself, but it has never hit me there. Never.
I have definitely had that happen.
It's happened to me during the run of play, during games. It's never happened in a wall. I actually think you are at far less risk in the wall than you think you are, and just the perceived threat is much, much greater than the chance of it actually happening.
See, what you've done here is you've tried to create a universal law based on your individual experience, because you're saying it's never happened to me, and therefore...
I haven't seen it happen to that many people.
But I'm literally saying it's happened to me.
Okay, but I've seen it happen to more people in the run of play than when facing a free kick.
Well,
if you take that as the standard, then you would have to run around with your arms down there the whole time to try to protect yourself.
There's a lot of questionable connections and conclusions that are being drawn here, because I think that is a bit harsh for a variety of reasons. Like, never mind the fact that it could just be the case that you have no idea what's happening, that you are, say you're injured on the ground and a shot hits you while you're injured on the ground. Well, it's technically hit you in the hand, so it's a handball. Is that what we're going with? See, like, there's lots of things.
If you get injured, keep your arms inside the vehicle.
All right, so we've gone with a nuanced and gray area appreciating understanding of the handball law or authoritarian Daryl. So have your pick. Have your pick, Joey.
I'd say hard and fast. Hard and fast rule.
Is what all dictators would say about themselves.
It's rebranded authoritarianism. It would make things simpler, though, right? Even if unjust. I guess authoritarian rule does make things simpler. You sort of know where you stand.
Okay, Thanos. There's shades of Dwight Schrute here where he was like, I'm not a dictator. I just think that under like my ideas, the world would be better, and if people disagreed, then they would be forced to obey.
Okay, I've got a couple of other ideas then. Okay, how about we use lie detector tests where after it happens, you ask, were you deliberately gaining an advantage? And then it's just a quick lie detector test,
Yeah.
and you find out whether they were or not. Or if you don't want to do that, maybe we don't have time to like put the put the arm on the thing and do the graph. You could just do facial recognition technology. The iPhone X does it now, and you can the ref holds a phone up, and you can basically gauge whether the look on the person's face after the ball hits their hand is guilt or surprise.
Is it Lie to Me? Is that the show? It's like the Tim Roth TV show where he really does. He reads your face in a millisecond and he can see how you react to different questions.
Tim Roth can do that?
I think that's a TV show.
This is a scripted show.
It's a scripted TV show, but he'll say a thing and then he'll be like, "Oh, you like bombed this place," and then they'll like make a face that's dismissive, and he's like, "Oh, it wasn't that place because you reacted that way." So maybe that's what you need.
He's sort of like the negotiator.
Yeah.
Where did his eyes go? Up and to the left.
Exactly.
So that's my other solution.
What you have actually done is stumbled upon what I feel like maybe is the future, which is there probably will be some sort of system, probably many years, but maybe 10 years or something like that down the road, where it will be like you'll have sensors everywhere, and it will be like it will ding on a ref's watch. He'll have a bunch of different watches, the referee, and it will ding if it's like a handball.
An arm of watches stretching all the way up to his armpit.
But I bet they probably will be able to have exactly. But they'll be able to have like sensors that will say like, "Ooh, he moved his hand in a deliberate way to block that ball.
Yeah.
It had all the familiar movements of a deliberate motion. Therefore, it's a handball." And the watch will go off, and he'll look at it and say, "Oh, watch says handball."
I can't wait to live in the techno nightmare future.
I like it.
Okay, we've answered Joey's question.
15 watches on either arm. I like it.
The ref will be some sort of hyper-advanced robot, right?
Well, now we've gone ludicrously too far.
That will become self-aware. Okay, next question.
AI is not our friend. Next question comes from Landon Cotham, who says, "What exactly do British commentators, pundits, podcasters mean when they say that a club is big? Is a club big because of their success and their history, or does it have to do with the quantity of supporters? As an example, I've recently heard people call teams like Wolves, no offense, Daryl,
none taken,
and Celtic big. I think one of those teams is big. I may be showing my lack of education, but my young American eyes see these clubs as medium at best."
Medium at best. Medium talent.
Medium talent. I think you're the one who introduced me to that anecdote, and it is
so
one of my
great.
favorite things in the world.
Just Google the phrase and you'll find the story.
It's the best insult.
So the answer is Landon's kind of got it right.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird all of the above approach. It's a little bit like when people ask if someone's world class, asking if a club is big. It means something, but it's very hard to define, right? We may need the judge from your first answer. What was the judge's name?
I
know it when I see it.
Potter Stewart.
Potter Stewart. Maybe we could get him in on this.
I thought for a moment, I went back to the AI thing, and I was like, did I create an AI judge? Like, is there artificial judge now? But I agree with you, yes.
So here's why, for example, and I'm not saying this with any bias, full disclosure, I'm a Wolves fan. The reason commentators in Britain will say Wolves are, quote, a big club, it's not because they're a team in the Championship and League One with a couple of seasons in the Premier League with like 30,000 fans a game, because that's not that unique in England. It's because in the 50s, Wolves won the league a lot, and they have this history. So it really is weighted. I think history carries a lot of weight in this situation.
Yeah.
And so I think... So Celtic won the European Cup back in '67. They're not likely to win the European Cup or the Champions League in the near future. So I think when teams are called big, it's a reference to a team being big before the current big money era, if that makes sense. And it implies to me a level of...
Actually, sorry to interrupt. What do you mean? So you're saying, like, in order to be a big club, like, Celtic could be a big club now, but by that rationale, would Man City be a big club in your mind?
So this is what I'm about to get to, is the distinction here. You don't often hear people say Man City's a big club or Liverpool's a big club or Man United's a big club, because you don't need to say it. People already know that these clubs are big. So it's more used as a compliment, implying that a club has the potential to be top tier, big in the way that Man United is. When you say that Celtic's a big club and Wolves are a big club, you could say, like, if things go right, then this team has the potential to be this. Whereas, like, MK Dons, to pick an example that's very easy to pick on, you wouldn't say they're a big club. It's very unlikely that no matter how much money was invested, that you would grow this gigantic fan base for MK Dons.
See, I'm not sure I'm correct, like, because I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because I've never thought about it like that, about big, like those massive clubs. We just know they're massive, so we don't need to talk about them. Actually, I have a thought on massive in just a second, because I would say that for me, number one, it's a combination of factors, because I think financial, historical, and like even infrastructure can play into how big a club is.
Yeah.
But I also think bigness is relative, that like City are big compared to Everton. Everton are big compared to, say, Swansea. Swansea are big compared to a League Two side. And I think you're always going to have this League Two side is going up against a big Premier League side in Swansea. Maybe not anymore, but I think it's always a sort of relative scale of bigness. Massive, I was just going to add, I was thinking about when I hear massive, and it's almost always British pundits referring to continental European opposition. It is always Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona are massive clubs.
I mean, a lot of it's just cliche in the British media, right?
They're
just using cliche phrases. We stuck on Man City. Man City, to me, is exactly the type of team that would have been described as big 10, 15 years ago.
But you mean Man City now or Man City under
Man City 10, 15 years ago, when they were in League One and they were struggling, people would still say, yeah, but they're a big club. That's what I'm saying. It's usually used as an indicator that they may be in this situation now, but they're a big club.
Genuine question.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Genuine question then. What would Coventry be for you?
You wouldn't say big club. No,
but they have that massive stadium, right?
Yeah, but it's impossible, which was built, I think, for the Commonwealth Games. Okay. So it's kind of that I may be wrong. I might be completely wrong about that. But it's hard to conceive of Coventry winning the Champions League or being this sort of team that everybody's talking about and the stadium is full. Okay. Right? So yeah, relative to the grand scheme of all the clubs in English football, Coventry City would be much more towards the big end, right? They're like a top 40 club or whatever.
Yeah.
But you would never say they were big in the way that you would say Leeds United is a big club.
That is very true.
I think the most weighted thing is probably history. If they've been successful in the past, then it's almost a synonym for successful in the past, and conceivable that they'll be successful again and have 40,000 fans singing about how great the team are.
All right. Then, Landon, I apologize for hijacking your question because I've got more questions for you. I genuinely do. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
You have to submit them at totalsoccershow.com/questions like everybody else.
All right, that's fair. Now I'm going to ask you anyway. So with that in mind, I do want to ask then, yesterday, I think you used them as an example of you might have to play this terrible club, but that club that you used was Nottingham Forest. Where would they be in the big club, non-big club estimations?
That's a weird one, right? Because they did win the European Cup and the Old English First Division. I think they win the European Cup twice in a row. Yeah. But it was even at the
twice
time,
in a row, it was once, and then they took a year off and then they won it again. But something
I'm not sure. I think it was twice in a row.
Okay, there we go.
But you wouldn't call them a big club because at the time they overperformed. That's what I remember. That whole thing of Nottingham Forest, it was essentially Brian Clough managed to put this team together, and part of the myth of that Nottingham Forest team is that they massively overperformed their resources.
Okay.
So maybe that's one of the reasons.
No, I think that helps, though, because then it does – because I'm genuinely now trying to really figure it out.
But there's also no actual definition, right? It's like world class. There's not a real way to define the word big. It's just the way that British football commentators use it. So you may hear someone say, oh, Forest's a big club, and they're just thinking about the history.
Yeah, but I've gone grey area neutral for the first question, so I can't do that twice in a row. But I think that's a really good point that you make about Nottingham Forest, which is that you might remember them for these one or two or three amazing seasons.
Yeah.
Go
on, Trevor Francis.
But it's not just a historical success that does it. You're right. It does have to be prolonged success or prolonged success combined with massive global attention. That's where I would say Celtic comes in. Is certainly not in most recent years. Obviously, they're still winning silverware, but I remember those the Old Firm derbies as being appointment TV. I remember Maurice Edu scoring and thinking wow, he has made it. This is a big deal that he has scored in that game. Whereas nowadays, I would think, oh, that's a great thing that an American scored. But it wouldn't be quite as exciting given the status of the two clubs nowadays. So I think you do have to have more than just, oh, they won the European Cup one year, so they're a massive club or a big club now.
Okay, I feel like I've said all I want to say.
Well, I really do appreciate your allowing me to ask you questions, because it is a thing that I found myself thinking about this a lot. I was driving to coach today, and it's a 30-minute drive for this one school. And it really was these first two questions really did dominate all of my thinking for a very long time, because I was really trying to think about them in objective and varying ways.
Eyes on the road, right?
More or less.
Eyes on the road.
Everybody else has eyes on the road. I don't have to, Daryl. That's how it works.
You're protected by the herd.
Yeah.
Today's show is sponsored by Away Days. Away Days Football. Go to awaydaysfootball.com. Away Days is a soccer clothing brand, an independent soccer clothing brand based out of Boston.
They are, and they offer the wonderful option that I am increasingly obsessed with, the Mystery Kit.
Mystery Kit.
You can place your order for Mystery Kit. You get one, as we've said before, not from Barcelona, Real Madrid, those massive clubs, or those big clubs, but maybe lesser known.
I wonder if you could get a big club.
And that's in one way. I wonder how many of the
interesting.
teams that we've mentioned just now, specifically Leeds and Nottingham Forest, might be one day included in an away days Mystery Kit.
So, for example, I know Sheffield United was included.
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily call them a big club. So I wonder if the actual judge of big clubs is away days football, because they absolutely set the cutoff at saying, we're not going to send you. Literally, I think they said, if you're an Arsenal fan, we won't send you a Spurs shirt. Don't worry. And no other rivalries like that, because they don't do big clubs.
Man.
We've found an arbiter.
There we go. I like that we've finally done it. So yeah, just go to away days. They're going to create some sort of database. You just put in your team name or club name, and they'll tell you whether or not they're big.
So you'll need to order enough mystery kits to get a sample of every possible jersey they could ever send you.
Yeah.
And at that point, you will have you'll create your own database by just seeing which teams you don't get.
Perfect. I'm sure they will be okay with that plan.
Luckily, you can get a discount.
Well, there we go.
So mystery kits are $25 for adults, but you get 15% off if you use the code TSS. 15% off anything at awaydaysfootball.com with the code TSS. Worth mentioning, there's other stuff at awaydaysfootball.com. There's the kids mystery kits.
That's pretty awesome.
Tiny mystery kits, so you can surprise your offspring with a jersey.
And I'm going to say I really like that option, because I'm a little aware that, like, if and when my wife and I have a kid, there will probably be a little effort on my part to brainwash into, like, the color blue is bad, and then go from there. So I can't have them rooting for City. That's not allowed.
Are you going to teach your kid that sky blue is bad, and you get them to stay indoors all the time?
Yeah. So I don't need them going to North Carolina, and I don't need them rooting for Man City. So, yeah. So I do like the idea of the away days kit as, like, you get them into it then they go research the team that is probably in League One and they'll never be able to watch. But still, it's exciting because it's a club that they might not know about.
And Away Days also has their own branded clothing with the soccer ball and the globe. It's a beautiful sort of overlaid soccer ball and globe logo. And then the stadium T-shirt is the one I like the most. There's hoodies, T-shirts, all that good stuff at awaydaysfootball.com.
And if you'll forgive me this, if you'll provide me this indulgence, forgive me this indulgence.
I mean, it's coming anyway, right?
I would say that, like, I remember you're darn right it is. I remember getting, like, a tiny pack of player cards when I was, like, 10, and it was like a bunch of Man United players and like 2 Sheffield Wednesday players. And so in my mind, for forever, Sheffield Wednesday were a big club because they have trading cards. And I do like that idea of, like, if you're a 12-year-old and you get a random championship team jersey, maybe they become your team.
That's true.
And
it's a good way to pick a team.
20 years from now, when they're the Premier League champions somehow.
That's what Bill Simmons should have done when he was trying to pick an English team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of picking one and then changing.
I can't help this. So I know what year you were born. I know when you were 10 years old, it would have been mid-90s, right? So Sheffield Wednesday players, mid-90s.
Oh, you expect me to remember the names? Because I
don't
remember the names. I just remember high shorts and angry faces.
High shorts and angry faces.
Yep. And puffy shirts.
That sounds like Chris Warhurst.
Sure, that checks out. Why not? Thank you to Away Days for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show.
Paul Warhurst. Sorry, Paul Warhurst. It's been so long I forgot his name.
Yes, it was definitely him, not the other one you said. Todd Starker, Dale Grove, for you.
Yeah.
In each half of a futsal match, a team gets 5 fouls and then concedes a penalty for every foul after that.
Kind of like basketball, right?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that's right. You're in the bonus.
But instead of fouling out, you concede a penalty.
Well, I think you have both, where like the player can foul out, but then also on top of that, if you commit too many fouls, it becomes an automatic. Like you automatically go to the free throw line.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what would be the impact of a similar rule in soccer?
I think it would create an almost no contact sport.
Agreed.
So if after 5 fouls...
With more diving, I would add on top of that.
I hadn't thought about that. If after 5 fouls, every foul after that was a penalty kick... and Todd did mention in his slightly longer original question that he understands the endless penalty kicks would get tedious. I actually think there would not be endless penalty kicks because I think defenders would be so terrified of tackling anyone. And it would take the fun out of it because even though it sounds fun for players to be able to dribble at will, part of the fun of watching Ricardo Quaresma go past someone is that it's a hard thing to do and he needs to pull out something special to do so. If he can just run past you and you can barely touch him because you're terrified of conceding a penalty kick at the halfway line, it's not going to be as enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. I think
high-scoring game, lots of dribbling, no fun.
I also think 2 things. One is that, like, that is part of the game. Like, there is that, like, reducer challenge of if they've got this really talented player who keeps dribbling at you, maybe one of your defenders takes that yellow card for the team and reminds them, like, yeah, I've got studs on the bottom of these feet.
So maybe what could happen is the first 5 fouls that people have got stood up will be absolute atomic bombs.
There we go.
Fouls.
All right, let's break some legs real fast because we got to get some people out of this game. Well, but then this led me, because I wasn't so excited about this idea, but it did lead me to wonder this, and I'm curious where you would come down on this. Do you think it's fair to say that futsal essentially de-incentivizes physical contact to the extent possible? As in, futsal is, I think, in my mind at least, and again, this may be coming from a complete position of ignorance, it feels like it is sort of designed to not have players slamming into each other, the way indoor soccer is, for example. But I think it's like there's no slide tackling, the ball kind of stays on the ground, you're not like going to aerial challenges all the time. It feels like it's much more about developing technical ability to the point where fouls are then like more uncommon, or at least more like, whoa, that was a bad foul.
Well,
That's definitely a penalty.
You're in a reduced space.
Yep.
There are lots of tight areas, so you can. And I've played a little bit of futsal. I'm not like a skillful rolling my foot all over the ball type player, but I learned defending in futsal that you can, because there's a line and the ball won't bounce off the wall. There's a line and it's a small cut. You can, just by your presence, without touching someone, without making physical contact, you can corner someone essentially, and then they've still got to use some skill to get out of that corner without. And because you're still making some contacts, so, and and you're not, as long as you're not fouling hard, right? You can step into someone and try and win the ball. It works perfectly for futsal, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
In a way that it would not for 11-a-side, because there's too much room to run around people.
So I completely agree, and this is again like, if we've been referred to as soft in the past. I'm not going to do anything to dissuade people from that notion, because in the past, when we've gotten questions like this...
We have 2 iTunes reviews calling us hard as nails.
There we go. But in the past, when we get questions like this, I am not as good as you are at trying to see it from all the different points. I think I tend to be like, I don't like that idea. And that's kind of where I was with this to begin with. I was like, no, it wouldn't work. What's the point of answer? But I really did try to put myself in a position of, when could this work? Why could you do this?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I don't think it could work in 11-a-side. And I'm aware that the build-out rule, everybody loved it. So why not tinker with youth soccer more? But I do wonder if this is a thing that you could potentially put into youth soccer, where it is much more, where you don't want it to be so much big kid knocks the little kid off ball, but you want it to be more about how you develop technical players. And so you kind of, if you're penalizing, if one player has 5 calls on them for slide tackling or being overly physical, then that means the team concedes a penalty. Maybe it teaches those players not to do that, or it coaches not to do that.
I like your openness to new ideas, but I think if you introduce this to youth soccer on big fields, then you would end up with the problem where you actually wouldn't develop technical skills, because you'd make it too easy to run past people.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So the idea, I think, should be just get kids to play futsal.
Yeah. Good shout. Good shout. But okay. And then with all that said, I still go back to, it's contact sport, and it's meant to be a contact sport. And I do think that is part of, I hesitate to say art because I'm aware of how that makes me sound, but I do think that's part of the game, is like you have players that are more physical and are going to win those challenges, and you have players who exist to dribble around those challenges, and it's an ever-present struggle.
It's a clash of different styles, right? Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Next question comes from Elliot Barr. It was via Twitter. We don't normally accept questions via Twitter, but Elliot Barr proposed to his fiancée successfully.
He sure did. Successfully.
At halftime of a Richmond Kickers game. He gets a pass.
I know what you mean by that, but the way I took that for a moment is that, like, there's a person out there who proposed to the wrong person. Like, I thought you were her. I didn't know. Successfully proposed to the correct person.
You know what I mean?
I do.
He got a yes. He got an affirmative answer.
He did.
So Elliot says, I play as a centre-back in the Central Virginia Soccer Association. For those who don't know, that's our local adult league. And I want to learn to play central defensive mid. What should I be focusing on when I'm practicing, or what can I do to become better at it? So Elliot wants to make the transition from a centre-back to a central defensive midfielder.
And he's playing in the CVSA. So I would say the most important rule as a holding midfielder is, if you come up against a bearded midfielded opponent who likes to talk and dribble a lot, just let him go by. That's a very important rule. But I do actually have three like sort of off-the-ball recommendations, or off-the-ball rules, if you want to go that route. So the first one... bear with me, Elliot, but I would say the first one is wanting to play that position doesn't mean you get to. And I mean that from a perspective of, I have played plenty of games and plenty of teams with people who are like, I'm a center midfielder. and then you watch them play, and they don't know how to do that. And what that tends to lead to is not necessarily listening, but they've just decided, this is where I play, this is how I'm supposed to play. And so I would say...
You throwing shade at me here?
No, I'm not at all. Not at all. Gerald Grove is a wonderful teammate. But I would say, so... You can have that desire, but I would say then, number 2, is that experience is obviously necessary, which means you've got to kind of throw yourself into it. Like, you've got to be willing to do it, but I think with that, you've got to be willing to take the critique and the constructive criticism you're going to get.
Okay.
Because I think...
One thing I want to throw in here, though, is that Elliot specifically said, what should I be focusing on when I'm practicing to get good at this? So it's not as if he's saying... I actually don't know who Elliot plays for. It's not as if he's going to demand, I'm going to learn defensive mid on the job, play me there, start first game of next season. Right.
But what I mean to say...
I know Elliot plays pickup as well, so he can get to practice it in pickup, which is a good proving ground with no consequences.
Fair.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, from a larger perspective, like... We have both played with that player who's like, this is how it's done. I'm not dropping back. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to sort of be, if you're learning, you've got to be open to learning. And that means you're going to get yelled at a couple times. People are going to be critical of you. You've got to kind of be open to that, because number 3, I would say, and this is where I get more into like the specifics, I would say evaluate the team that you play on and how they play and figure out what that means for you as a midfielder. Because if you are one who, say, if you're a player who wants to play with the ball at your feet, quick passing, lots of touches, and your team is kick it long to the fast guy and we're going to score a goal, they don't necessarily need you doing that in the middle, but maybe they need you then, but that leaves us open to counterattacks, so maybe they need you to work on how to shield the back line and keep your head on a swivel. So I would say look at your team and what they're doing and try to build your game off of what they want to do.
Yes, I had in my head the way I want central defensive midfield to play, which is kind of like Sergio Busquets.
See, that's the thing. But if your team is just hoofing it over the top, Sergio Busquets is kind of negated.
He'd still be good at that, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I've talked a lot. I have one more thing, but I won't.
No, keep going.
Then I was going to say, and then the other thing like that, I think fitness is obviously a big concern. So you got to improve fitness. But I would also
covering more ground anywhere in midfield. You're covering more ground than if you play centre.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
I know that based on how tired I am after I've done one.
I mean, it's why when we play and I'm like playing up top and someone's like, "Oh, we need another midfielder." I'm like, "Okay, sub somebody else in," because I know what that entails. But I would say the biggest thing that I think people, in my opinion, don't recognize when they go from playing out wide or in the back or up top into the middle is just how quickly you have to make decisions.
Yes.
How quickly you have to be able to read and evaluate that person stepping, that person isn't stepping, there's space there isn't space there. You've got to be able to do that in seconds.
Would you agree that it's more of a 360 degrees game
100%.
Once you step into the middle? Like I think in the back you can mostly focus on what's in front of you and either side, and like if you're on a wing, then you can focus everything to the interior for the most part. So any central midfield, you really are looking all around you. You've got to check over your shoulder, in front of you, to the right, to the left, all points on the compass.
Yeah. And so I absolutely agree with you, because otherwise, if you're like a right midfielder who suddenly is in the middle, you might only ever look to pass to like the right back or the right forward. Like you might not be looking at kind of the variety of options.
Okay, so let's get to some like genuine tips for this then. Yeah. So the all points on the compass thing, I think the thing you see the very best defensive midfielders do, and not a lot of amateur players do, which I think they could learn to do, is check your shoulder, look around. Part of the game is to look around the whole time so that you can constantly see what's happening.
Yep.
And even if you're not involved in the play in that moment, just keep looking around. You've got to have a picture in your head of the game the whole time.
Yep.
That fair?
I agree with that.
I would say another part of the defensive midfielder's job, okay, it's one thing if you are just banging it long for a striker to chase, but I think a lot of the time the defensive midfielder, it's their job to keep the ball moving from one side to the other. Like if your left mid passes the ball to you or the left back passes the ball to you in the middle, it's quite likely that a lot of the opposition will be squeezed over to that side, especially in an adult league in Richmond, right? So it could be your job to be the guy that then looks to the right, spreads the play out to the right. You can be the distributor. It doesn't have to be a fancy ball. It can just be you make the decision quickly to spread it out to the other side. Then you'll be helping stretch the other team out. You could do that with 2 touches.
Yep.
But you only know where the right back is and the right mid is if you've been looking over there to begin with. So keep checking your shoulder, checking left, right all the time.
Agreed. And then I would say, with that in mind, like we know Elliot goes to Richmond Kickers games. I think it's easy if you're watching a game or if you are playing a game and you've been subbed out, it's easy just to switch off and like chat with some friends, or if you've been subbed out, you drink some water, you're kind of looking at where the ball is. You're not necessarily looking at the person who plays your position, what they're doing when they're in, or what somebody at professional level is doing when they're in. Yeah. And it really can help you to see like, oh, I see how he's making that run. I see where he's looking. I see how he's turning on the ball. And I think all that's really important, because the other thing I was going to say is, I don't think trying to play a firm position, I'm not saying this is what Elliot is doing, but trying to play a firm position in pickup, it's never a good idea in my opinion.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because everybody's all over the place. Pickup is, even if you kind of have a rough formation, you're always going to have everybody kind of moving all over the place.
It's a bit of a scramble, right?
And so if you're looking for your right midfielder to be on the right flank and you turn, that right midfielder might be as your left back now. And then suddenly there's nobody there, and you're maybe not going to get that sort of understanding of the like spatial relationships you're actually going to have in a game.
Here's the thing I would say then. At pickup, you've almost got to be the bigger guy by thinking, all right, everyone else is here to dribble and do whatever. Because I've played a lot of pickup where people just dribble or they want to just be flash. I'm not here to do that today. I don't care that no one is going to appreciate me like playing short passes and working on defensive midfield and maybe like holding a spot in the middle, but I'm just going to work on it for me, and I don't care what anyone else thinks.
Man, and that player is, in my opinion, the best person to have at pickup. Because if everybody is focused on playing simple and connecting passes, and it isn't just like, watch my like mazy run through the middle that doesn't really lead anywhere and suddenly we're all out of position, it's not necessarily as useful as working on that passing. And so I do think, if you're doing pickup, maybe don't think of it as like, how can I switch the ball from left to right? But think of it more so as like, how can I play simple in a congested space that will help you with that decision-making and awareness.
Can I offer a final one, which is a defensive one? I think in some ways you've got to decide whether you're going to be the player that chases the ball and wins it. Like sort of like Jonathan Gonzalez always did for Monterrey when we saw him. He would always just be chasing the ball around and winning it and getting it, and he would just rely on his like speed and aggression to get there and win it. But there's a different way to do it, which is to basically block off the passing lanes and help your centre backs in that way. Like still stay like 15 yards away from your centre backs. But if you know there's a centre forward and your centre back's marking him and he's having trouble with him, one thing you can do is just like stand about 15 yards in front and just make sure that whoever's got the ball, you are in their line of sight to the centre forward, and you can cut out that pass. And that centre forward might, if he's not smart enough, he might not know why that pass is never coming. But you'll be sort of secretly shielding your centre backs and not letting that centre forward get the ball.
There we go.
So that's a way to do it without charging around everywhere. You can sort of screen by slowly blocking off passing lanes in that way.
I agree. There we go. Hopefully that's been a helpful answer.
I enjoyed it.
From the psychological to the physical.
Another 2 more questions to get to on today's show. One about Audi and one about FIFA's money. Is it that FIFA spent all their money on Audis? Maybe we'll find out.
I mean, would you be surprised?
But first, today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. Roughneck Scarves are the makers of more soccer scarves than you can possibly imagine. You can get US national team scarves, Major League Soccer scarves, all kinds of other national team scarves as you get ready for the World Cup.
You're right and you're wrong there, because they do also offer the custom scarf option. So you could then make the scarf that you're imagining, and then maybe you run out of ideas. Suddenly you can't imagine anything anymore.
But then other people are imagining scarves, so it's more scarves than you can possibly. How many can you imagine?
I'm going to say right there, Daryl, you just lawyered me. So good job by you.
You got lured.
How many can you imagine? 4. That's it. That's all I got. So we did ask, if you were to design a custom roughneck scarf to represent the 2017-2018 Premier League season, what would it look like?
Sorry, I'm still laughing at you only being able to imagine 4 scarves.
That's it. It's the limit of my creativity.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah, we asked about
rectangle scarf,
a Premier League scarf to represent this season. We got lots of good answers. We've chosen a few.
None of them are mine.
First is from Keith Kalmbach. Keith Kalmbach says his Premier League scarf for the season would have Pep on one side sitting on the Iron Throne. Isn't it sit the Iron Throne? Sitting the Iron Throne. Except all of the swords are the different Premier League managers. That's an intense image. And on the other side is Mo Salah literally carrying Liverpool, Jose putting a for sale sign on Man United players, and Arsene Wenger tearfully leaving Arsenal in 6th place. This is a scarf of misery.
He's really prepared for the next season of Game of Thrones. We got some time though. Kenton Staler says Mo Salah on one side, less problems on the other.
Brilliant. I love it. I would say, actually, with Keith, I disagree that Mo Salah is carrying Liverpool. I really think he's benefiting from what Liverpool are doing as much as anybody else.
I agree with that.
But Mo Salah, less problems, is great from Kenton. Thank you. Michael Seidel says, on side 1, it would be Pep on a throne.
I've just realized Mohamed Salah needs to get a salad sponsorship, because right there, that's like some healthy eating quote right there. Mo Salah, less problems.
Sort of like John Hamm's John Hamm.
Yeah. And ham and bubbly.
Michael Seidel says, on side 1, Pep on a throne. So that is definitely a theme of this season, I think accurately so. Side 2, Zlatan and Rooney dressed as turn-of-the-century immigrants on a steamer ship to America.
That's outstanding.
I'm going to add with John Mulaney, well-dressed, with a hat, waving him off.
Perfect. Daryl, did you know that the best part about John Ham's John Ham is that it comes with a free container of mustard soap, which has no soap properties whatsoever? Royce the Voice says, players on all fours in a line like that Huddersfield Town celebration on both sides, like an infinity celebration, hashtag up the Terriers.
So I haven't seen this celebration, but I can picture it. And I kind of like the idea of an endless celebration for Huddersfield for their staying up.
I think that's about what it will be for the next couple of days.
At least for the summer, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think David Wagner let them go out and party, right? Even though there's a whole Premier League game left.
They cancelled their flight back, I think it was, to take a party bus back to have more than one beer, is what I think he said.
Aaron Moore's like, I'll get fit for the World Cup later. We had a couple of bonus ones come in late on Twitter. Omi says, Wenger out on one side of the scarf. On the other side, oh my God, it's really happening. What will we do with all the Wenger out signs?
I think I've thought about this. Just add a question mark and then keep them around. Like, as though, like, would that solve the problem? And then you just have them everywhere.
Like, has he gone yet?
Well, no, it's more like, have you noticed, like, you know the joke that, like, people have Wenger out signs everywhere now? So it will be, like, game day on ESPN, somebody has a Wenger out sign. Or, like, a protest in D.C., somebody has a Wenger out sign. Now you just make it a question mark, and that implies, like, would this solve the problem that we're talking about? Wenger out? I don't know. It could. Let's just fire Arsene Wenger from whatever job he has right now and see if it solves anything.
PSG general manager was one rumoured thing. Okay.
Yeah, keep him in.
For more scarves than Taylor could possibly imagine. So 5+. Go to roughneckscarves.com. The link will be in the show notes. And if you use the code TOTALSoccerShow, all one word, you'll get 20% off any scarf you can find there.
So thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's program. Daryl Grove, I think you asked me the last question, so thankfully I get to ask you Alexander King's question. Can you guys describe the Audi Player Index? In this case, can you, Daryl, describe the Audi Player Index? What contributes to it? How can someone have a negative? Please explain the complicated algorithm behind it and all the factors that go into every player's individual Audi Player Index number.
The last part wasn't actually Alexander's question.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Can we describe the Audi Player Index? It's how many Audis you have. Right?
I was drinking at that moment and I almost did a spit take, so thanks for that.
You get a negative score if you park in a no parking spot and your Audi gets towed.
There we go.
There we go. We absolutely solved it. It actually, here's how it's described. Audi Player Index condenses a wide range of individual actions by a player into a single score. That's how they describe it. If you've never seen it, I see it mostly in Major League Soccer. I think that might be the only place it's used regularly. And essentially players will, at the end of the game, actually during a game and at the end of the game, will have a score, and the score will be like 443. That's David Villa's score. And someone else will have a score of 28, and someone else could have a score of negative 70.
I mean, I think on the MLS site it says that part of the algorithm that determines this number is proprietary information. So I'm assuming it is owned by Major League Soccer, or at least only Major League Soccer is licensed to utilize it.
Well, it's up to data. It's definitely up to data. They're essentially, so if you've seen the obvious up to data, like, you know, he had 2 of 2 interceptions, 74 of 78 passes completed. From what I can tell, Audi are taking the up to data and then they've sort of weighted.
It's definitely Audi doing it, sure.
It's or, you know, a company that Audi has paid, and then they weight each thing and give it a score, right?
Didn't it used to be like the Castrol Player Index?
Yes, it was the Castrol Petrol Power Index.
So back then it was them doing the calculations, was it? All right, anyway.
I think you've understood how sponsorship works, I'm pretty sure. So normally you get the raw up to data, right? You can just look at it and you can be like, oh, he had a lot of tackles or whatever, and that's how you would interpret data. With the Audi Player Index, there are things like a tackle is worth a certain amount of points. I didn't look that up, so that was a bad example. But a key pass is worth 25 points.
You're right.
Winning a ball in the air is worth around 8 points. An unsuccessful pass in the opposition half is worth negative 10 points. And an unsuccessful pass in your own half is worth negative 20 points. So whoever runs the Audi Player Index, let's just say it's Audi, takes up to data, assigns weight to each action, and then adds it up to a total score at the end of the game.
So then if you're a player... well, sort of. Then if you're a player, and I don't mean that critically of you, it's more so critical of the system itself. But then if you're a player who misplaced a bunch of passes in your own half, missed some tackles, scored an own goal, and missed a penalty, you're going to have a negative score.
Yes,
so
you
that's
are.
how you can have
Very
a negative score.
Negative. Yeah, and there were some big scoring items. So if you score from distance, apparently if you score from outside the box, it's worth 327 points. If you miss a penalty kick, literally miss the target, it's worth negative 354 points.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And it is a little more complicated, right? Because like the winning a ball in the air is worth slightly different value for like where you do it and how hard it was. So it could be 8 points, 10 points, 12 points, 6 points. So each thing is weighted very precisely.
And that's the algorithm part. That's what I was alluding to when I was saying that, like, even if you know all of the individual scores, there are still different weights to determine how much that actually is worth.
And that is the strength and the weakness. Because you can't recreate it, but because you can't recreate it because you don't know the algorithm, even if you know the Opta data, which is where they're pulling it from originally, you don't quite know how they arrive at the final score, and it's not really explained. So you end up with just, you have David Villa has 400 points, or you have... I'm struggling to pick an MLS player at random. Paul Arriola has 225, scores 225 on the Audi Player Index.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean anything because you've got no frame of reference for it. So it's an attempt to take stats, commercialize them with a sponsor, and make them more digestible as a single number representing the player's overall performance. But it fails because there's no frame of reference.
Yeah, and I also, again, like I may be wrong here, but in my time viewing Major League Soccer and viewing footage of Major League Soccer coverage of it, I feel like there is never a deliberate attempt to say Daryl Grove had a 600 Audi index or player index. Let's see how he got that and show you the key plays that led to this score. And obviously you can't go like point for point, number by number, as we've already talked about. But like it would be helpful to see Daryl Grove won this contested header. That's plus 20 points. Like those were some of the big plays he made, and those are the points that contribute to this. But I feel like what you get is, here's a look at the Audi Player Index.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. Like it's just I feel like there's not much of an attempt to make it make sense.
I think it's almost a good idea. I really do. And if they'd done the scoring in a way and then weighted it in a way afterwards or converted it afterwards to a scale that was recognizable. Like if you were just out of 100 and you would be, say, Taylor Rockwell had a good game, he scores an 87 out of 100. I think because people are familiar with FIFA and other video game type stats and everybody just knows the 0 to 100 score, that would just make sense in some way, right? You can at least gauge it. But because the numbers are so wild in the Audi Player Index, like 500 down to negative 500, it's like going to a foreign country where you don't understand the temperature. Like when I first moved here, I only dealt in Celsius. Trying to figure out what the temperature was in Fahrenheit just made no sense to me. It makes sense now because I know that if it's 80, it's hot. I know if it's 20, it's real cold. But it took me a while to figure that out, and you only learn by experience. And now I have a frame of reference.
But even like, so you're talking about you here, or like general listeners. It's still interesting to me that when you watch like the video for the Audi Player Index on the MLS site, you'll get different players discussing it. And like two that stood out to me were Sasha Kleshton saying, I didn't really know what it was, but then I found out I got to lease an Audi for a year. So then I started to take an interest. And you have Juan Agudelo saying, well, I know that like having a good score is good, and coaches like good scores, so you want to have a good it's like it doesn't really convey to me that they have like a keen idea as to what's happening there. The biggest one I thought was interesting was Sean Johnson, essentially saying like more or less that it helps evaluate players that maybe otherwise you wouldn't necessarily focus on. So I think a lot of times a goalkeeper is only going to be your man of the match if he's made 15 amazing saves. But if Sean Johnson comes out and collects the ball and has a defensive stop and makes a defensive action, he gets kind of credit for that. And I do think it helps to value undervalued positions and skill sets.
I think it would be better if we saw the entire, like maybe if just in the broadcast we saw the entire team and their score, and you could sort of get a feel for, but still you don't know where those numbers have come from, so it still doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a frame of reference, Audi.
Ooh, Daryl's hitting the table. That means he's mad.
I'm mostly frustrated because it's so close to being a good idea. It's so close to being a way that you take stats and make them consumable by fans, but it's just they're just off with the way they present it.
Okay. That's a kinder, gentler way of putting it. But yes, I agree with you.
Oh, we just got an email.
Yeah.
Audi said they're going to decline the sponsorship that they were going to take up on the Total Soccer Show.
All right. I can't really fault them for that one. I thought you were just going to make up arbitrary rankings about our performance thus far, and I would have believed you. So there we are.
You get 720.
Yes. Speaking of arbitrary decision-making, we've got one more question.
All right. You want me to ask it?
I do.
Is what I gather from your tone of voice and you staring at me. It's from Colin Marshall. Colin's question is, this is a great way to phrase this, why does FIFA need all this money?
Yeah.
With the news that FIFA is considering selling the rights to the Club World Cup for $25 billion and hosting a mini World Cup every 2 years, I am unclear as to why they need all this cash. Does any of this money benefit world soccer? If so, how? Can we, before we answer the question, can we address the news of the $25 billion Club World Cup mini tournament thing?
Sure, go ahead.
So as I read a story today, actually, that it's there's a what would you call it? A commercial fund has offered to pay FIFA $25 billion over a certain number of years when the potential total value is $25 billion to get the rights to a big Club World Cup style tournament, which would take place in the summer, but it would have major, not just 6 or 7 teams, it would have 24 teams. It would be a big event. And also possibly the rights to a global League of Nations, similar to the UEFA Nations League and the CONCACAF Nations League. And then the idea, Gianni Infantino has put it to some FIFA executives, the council, and essentially said, hey, we could get $25 billion for this, maybe we should do it. So Colin's question then is, what would FIFA do with all that money?
Yes.
Why does FIFA need all this money?
And just to clarify, Colin, when I said, speaking of arbitrary decision-making, I wasn't referring to your question, or you, the questioner. I was referring more so to FIFA's award process, in my opinion. Because, yes, it does benefit soccer, global soccer, at least to some extent, because the idea would be that FIFA is a nonprofit.
Yep.
Their goal is to reinvest the money they make into developing the game around the world.
I have their mission statement.
Have at it.
Under Infantino, it was called the FIFA 2.0. This was their vision, was to promote the game of football, protect its integrity, and bring the game to all. That's what FIFA are doing. That's their sort of non-profit mission statement.
Yeah, and so if you want to go how do you want to approach this with what they do with their money?
Maybe let's give an overview of actually how much money FIFA have.
Okay.
Or FIFA has. So, as I understand it from my research, they take in one World Cup cycle, they take in about $5.5 billion US dollars. $5.5 billion of revenue over a 4-year World Cup cycle. They have about $1 billion in reserve. I actually have no problem with that as a non-profit. I think if you want to make sure that you have money for emergencies, like for an emergency World Cup or whatever,
and did you read that
$1 billion
part?
is an okay number to have in the bank.
Because I think we probably read the same thing then, but just to further clarify, a big part of that is if something does go wrong, it's really difficult to deal with insurance with that, apparently. So you have to have a massive amount in reserve to be able to handle unexpected costs if something went catastrophically wrong. And there's a lot of ifs in there, is what I would say. And
I still believe you can be a non-profit and have $1 billion in reserve if that $1 billion isn't being sort of skimmed off by people or going into people's pockets. If it's literally sitting there for very rainy days, then I'm fine with that. Okay. From there, from the money that FIFA takes in for this 4-year cycle, apparently $5 million will be given to each member association. That's 211 FIFA member associations, one of which would be, say, the United States Soccer Federation. $5 million over 4 years. And then each confederation, so a confederation would be like UEFA or CONCACAF, receives $40 million. Both of these numbers are up. It used to be $1.6 million per cycle and $22 million for a confederation per cycle. So those are the basic ways that FIFA just transfers money to smaller organizations.
Yes.
Beyond that, smaller nations are eligible for travel and equipment funding. I found the form on the FIFA website. If you are New Caledonia or the Cook Islands or, a team that the FA doesn't have much money and you've got a game to go to and you need money for travel and hotels, maybe you need some equipment to make sure you can go and play the game, FIFA will very likely write you a check and send you the money to cover your costs. So some of the money gets out that way.
And that is wonderful because it does help countries that don't have the infrastructure or the financial resources to be able to develop the game within their country. It helps them do that theoretically. The downside to it is that, as we've seen, there is, in my opinion, there's a reason why every member of FIFA gets the exact same amount of money. It's because some countries maybe will think, I would love $5 million coming into my bank account. That would be awesome. So maybe I'll vote for the person who says they're going to give me that amount of money.
I mean, that's part of why Infantino won the vote, right? That was a good proposal in terms of getting votes.
Yeah, exactly.
That definitely worked for him.
And so it's great, but there is that part of like, there is that line where it becomes sort of like, oh, you want like your travel funded? Well, maybe I would like your vote on this. Like there is that sort of, I could see that kind of conflict there.
So I've also got some other expenses that FIFA has. Staff, they pay all their staff. Pensions of former staff. I can see how that adds up. And then they have development funds. So member associations like US Soccer and confederations like CONCACAF can apply for development funds under the FIFA Forward Development Program, which aims to essentially bring the game to new places. So if US Soccer wanted to, I'm just using US Soccer because that's where we are, if they wanted to build a soccer complex where one does not exist. Let's make up a town. Let's call it Anytown, USA. And no one there really likes soccer, but there's a potential for kids to benefit maybe from playing soccer there. You can apply to the FIFA Forward Development Program and you might get a grant so that you can build a soccer facility in Anytown, USA.
Right. And there are
123 Main Street, Anytown, USA.
Perfect. And there are examples of this. There are examples of FIFA helping to grow the game, create infrastructure, create fields, supply equipment, whatever you need to help areas that don't have access to soccer have access to soccer.
Yep. It's part of the FIFA Development Committee, of which Mia Hamm is an independent member. I looked that up. And they do have funds and provide resources to member associations who are trying to do things.
Yes.
There's also the Football for Hope project, which is where FIFA will partner with and fund programs to use football for social development around the world. I would say street soccer, a program that we're involved in, is the type of thing that the FIFA for Hope project would be willing to partner with and fund. The problem is, in my opinion, is, well, I actually don't know if they get funds from Football for Hope or not, is that only 0.7% of FIFA's budget goes towards the Football for Hope project.
I mean, I think literally in the breakdown of the finances, there is one $500 million segment that just says other funds. So who knows there?
It says reason for legal case.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason we're not allowed in that hotel anymore.
It says other funds, and they drew an X through it and wrote nothing to see here. And so going back to Colin's question,
these aren't the funds you're looking for.
Perfect, with a wave of the hand. Yeah. It's a confusing thing because on the one hand, you look at some of their accounts and you think, like, yeah, major global organization, that makes sense. So salaries and pension and employee funds, that makes sense. But then you kind of look at the numbers and you think, but does it make sense? Because do these people working for a nonprofit about soccer, should they be making as much as they are that it necessitates however many millions and millions and millions of dollars they're setting aside for that employee fund? Or is it maybe, hey, we've got all this money coming in, we can probably afford to pay ourselves a bit more than we already are, and it kind of goes from there?
My feeling is it's great that FIFA takes some of the money and uses it for developments like building fields or giving to associations to build facilities. But I think they could do a lot more. And I think it would be good for FIFA's image. It would be good for the game of soccer, and it would be good for just the world. It would be good for people in sort of remote or low income or underdeveloped areas. For FIFA to really be aggressive about going in there and saying, hey, we are going to help you get some soccer stuff done here, and it's going to be for the good of the community. Yeah. How many times have you seen videos of kids, I'm not going to pick a country or a city, but, in sort of quite remote areas playing soccer on a bare piece of grass, and, it's an old ball that's falling apart. FIFA could go in there and provide soccer balls and goals and a nice new field. That's a thing that they literally could be going and doing around the world, and it would genuinely improve people's lives.
It would, absolutely. I don't know if I believe that they could. And I don't mean because I think FIFA's so corrupt that they wouldn't have any interest. It's just that they're a massive bureaucracy. Yeah. Massive bureaucracies don't do anything quickly, and they don't do anything aggressively. So I think that's where, if you want to see that type of action, it probably requires a restructuring so that you have like specific teams or organizations that are designed to be those sort of like aggressive, we're going to come in, we're going to figure out what needs to be done, and we're going to do it. We're not going to have to get 400 signatures from people in Switzerland. Yeah. We have the authorization to spend up to this in this country. We're going to go evaluate what we need to do. We'll consult with the FA if we need to, but if they don't want our help, if they just want the money, then we'll bypass them. We'll find some land. We'll get it going.
That's what you would like to see happen?
I think so. I think you're not wrong. I think that they could be doing a lot more and should be doing a lot more, and we've heard plenty of stories about Jack Warner in Trinidad mowing a field, putting up 2 goals and saying, yep, it's a $2 million facility.
And he got some funding for that, and a lot of that money seemed to go missing.
Yeah.
Right?
And
we have to be careful legally, I think, but I'm going to say you definitely did that stuff.
I'm all right with it. When it comes to Jack Warner, I'm fine with it. But so I do think you're right that like having groups, like specific organizations or teams or whatever, whose job it is to go into a country that has applied for a grant or applied for more funding and see what they can do to assist in developing the game there. I think giving those sort of groups, well-vetted groups, I would say, more license to do what they need to do, I think that would definitely help.
Here's the thing I would love to see. So I like to use examples where I sort of know what I'm talking about in terms of the area, right? Where I grew up, the town I grew up in, there is a little row of shops and some land behind it at the bottom of a street called Windmill Hill that has been sort of derelict and boarded up and looking like a mess for about 15 years, right? Nothing ever happens with it. It is big enough to put in a nice little soccer field, like maybe the size of a basketball court or maybe 2 basketball courts, where a field could be built there and all the kids that sort of hang around the neighbourhood could go and play soccer there in my town in England, right? I don't think anyone there is like applying to FIFA for funds because it's too small, right? It would have to trickle down through the FA, then to local governments, and it's like this whole trickle down thing. But what if there was a way for just a citizen, a local citizen who's like a community activist to submit a proposal to FIFA, like photos of the area and say, hey, we could do with a field here. Come help us fix it. And then you can bypass everybody and go straight to that.
Not to be a stick in the mud, but I still feel like they're such a massive organization that if you, Daryl, send your application like to FIFA in Switzerland, can I have money? Like they're not just going to cut you a check. They're going to send people. It's going to be a slow process. Those people are going to go back. They're going to have to get 14 commissions to sign off.
Yeah.
And so that, again, is where I think if you have a more aggressive approach.
I'm picturing this more as like a FIFA project team would come to the neighbourhood and would essentially just say, okay, yes, we're doing this. We are going to sort of take over the planning and we're going to find out who we need to speak to on city council and we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Like an actual FIFA action project team to get fields built in places like that.
Yeah. I like this
and
idea.
I understand the levels of bureaucracy that you would have to go through, but I think it's possible if they tried. Anything's possible if you really, really try.
If you really, really try.
Yeah.
And I think that is why I'm confused as to why I'm so frustrated by this right now. And I think my answer is because if you really try, and what FIFA should be doing is improving the lives of people. That's what their mission statement is. In addition to,
and that's why I chose that example. There are kids in that town that don't know what to do with themselves. They're just sort of hanging around doing nothing. You could build them a soccer field. Yeah, there's a facility down the street, but it costs money to go and play in the league. This would be for free.
Or like that, like a facility in, say, an island nation in the Caribbean that we might have already mentioned.
Yeah,
like that facility isn't just meant to be for soccer. It's supposed to be a school or an education facility or some sort of like secondary schooling, or it can be any number of things that people need. And I just think FIFA could be doing so much more.
Yeah, you could build a community centre with a soccer field inside of it, but it's also a community centre.
Yeah, or like a soccer field next to a desalination plant or something to like provide clean drinking water to the soccer fields, but also to the surrounding community. Like I just think there's so much more that FIFA could be doing to dramatically improve both its reputation and the quality of life of people around the world, and I just don't think it does that. And with the knowledge of how much money they have and how they're given $30,000 watches at random meetings, it's one of the few things about soccer that makes me sort of hurt inside.
Right.
Aside from when I'm not allowed to use my hands to cover parts of my body in a wall.
Well, thank you to Colin for the question. So the short answer again is FIFA does do stuff, but they should do more.
Yes.
Fair? Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions.
We
answered all the questions. Well done, us.
Well done, us.
If you've got questions for us, it's totalsoccershow.com/questions. We put a call out on Twitter the other day. Got a flood of questions.
We sure did.
Lots and lots of really good questions, including one about pressing that we're excited to answer next week.
We also got one about nutmegs. Did you answer? Did you reply to that one?
Was that one was actually on Twitter, right?
Yes.
As in, it didn't come via email, it came via Twitter. Do you want to quickly answer it then?
Well, I was just going to say, I think we did a very in-depth answer of that a while back. Can't you find our question shows on our website?
Yes, I don't know the URL, but I will put it in the show notes. Yeah, and I will put a link to the show where we answer the nutmeg question. Why is it called a nutmeg? In the show notes.
There we are. But that's suffice to say that you can find our other listener question shows where we've answered lots and lots of questions.
We certainly have, and we've loved almost every one of them.
We have indeed, except for when they make me think about FIFA. But we also enjoy the TSS Scouting Network. We've got many reports to get to.
I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed the question. It's just in the end, it makes me kind of sad, and I don't like being sad. I like being happy. So let's talk about happy things.
Okay.
Like youngsters doing stuff. Jonathan Holmgren scouting Foster Langsdorff, 22-year-old American forward for the Portland Timbers 2.
PT2.
Mm-hmm. Langsdorff with the full 90 in T2's 0-0 draw with St. Louis. He is consistently starting for T2 and seems to be involved in chances every single match.
Slight sidebar. Have you seen the Portland Timbers mockumentary about the rivalry with Seattle?
I have not yet. I've seen a number of different quotes from it, and they all seem pretty amazing to me, a non-Seattle resident.
Oh, the one quote is about someone, the city planners in Seattle cooked some spaghetti and threw it on the floor and said, "That, make our roads look like that." Did you know Ken Burns retweeted it?
No.
And praised it as a form of documentary.
Oh boy, they should submit it, man. You never know what's going to win Best Documentary. You never know.
I'm also interested, how do Seattle fans feel about that?
Oh, probably not great.
But because it does poke fun at Seattle, but it's also, it seems to me to be mostly good-natured, right? There's no actually nasty stuff in there. And it got me thinking, sorry, I'm off on a tangent here, but it got me thinking about the conversation I had with the Cooligans when they talked about a very specific American soccer culture that isn't the sort of like 80s, I hate my rival really, like, and I'm going to beat them up, but instead it's this weird sort of poking fun and satire and all that kind of stuff.
But isn't there also a chance that rivalry is more geographic than it is soccer? Like, isn't there also a chance?
It feeds into both things.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a good example of American soccer fandom.
Fair enough.
Jake Lamar is scouting Austin Trusty, the 19-year-old American centre-back for the Philadelphia Union. Jake says Austin Trusty went the full 90 in the 3-0 away loss to Toronto. This is the fourth or fifth game where Austin seems to be reacting rather than anticipating and arrives just a half second too late, which is a long time in soccer. While Jake wants to believe that this is happening because of major breakdowns in the midfield, it sometimes looks as if it's Austin Trusty not keeping up with the pace of Major League Soccer.
Not ideal. Trent Bruckel scouting Timothy Tillman, the 19-year-old defender/midfielder for Bayern Munich.
Timmy Till.
Timmy's contract with Bayern is up this summer. According to Bild, there's interest in Timmy from his hometown team, FC Nuremberg, who were promoted to the Bundesliga. This would be a decent move for the German-American, as his chances at breaking into the Bayern first team seem pretty unlikely, and the chance of top-tier minutes at Nuremberg would be great for his development.
Oh, German-American in not quite making it at Bayern shock. But at least we get to see more of Timothy Tillman if he actually goes and plays.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, Dylan Viach is scouting Kai Havertz. Speaking of youngsters who do make it in the Bundesliga, Kai Havertz is the 18-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Dylan says Kai started and played the full 90 in a crucial match for Bayer against Werder Bremen as they chased the final Champions League spot. Unfortunately, Kai was unable to convert his team's best chance of the game. He skied it over the goal from 6 yards out, earning a negative 100 in the Audi Player Index. And the game ended in a 0-0 draw. Luckily for Leverkusen, Hoffenheim lost over the weekend and are now only ahead of Bayer on goal difference. Bayer play Hanover on the final match day, or Hoffenheim faces Dortmund.
Slightly more dramatic in the Bundesliga than the Premier League.
It is. I'm glad I've got Fox Soccer Match Pass.
There we are. Alex Pennington scouting Yacine Adli, 17-year-old French attacking midfielder for PSG. Yacine has been dubbed the French Ryan Sessegnon. It's a deep cut. And when compared to Adrien Rabiot, is a very elegant player. He almost glides when he plays on the wing.
Is that some side-eye at Adrien Rabiot?
I believe it is. I mean, I think anytime that you see competition, maybe for your scoutee, you sort of drop a little shade. And Yacine also has excellent passing ability. The youngster is without a pro contract and will be available for a free this summer unless PSG can buck the trend and lock him down.
Jonathan Holmgren is scouting Alex Iwobi, the 22-year-old Nigerian attacker for Arsenal. Iwobi scored Arsenal's fourth goal in their 5-0 drubbing of Burnley, says Jonathan. Alex helped launch the attack that led to the goal, dribbling through midfield, passing out wide to the left to Aubameyang, and then receiving the ball back before drilling it into the top right corner. Alex Iwobi is quietly involved in a lot of good things for Arsenal.
Well, Jonathan, not a criticism of Jonathan because this game happened yesterday, but Alex Iwobi did have I'm just going to put it this way, hilarious miss yesterday in Arsenal's game.
He can afford it.
He shot from like the top corner of the 18, and I think it went out for a throw-in between the corner flag and midfield. Oof. It was a bad shot. He'd
banked enough Audi Player Index points to not worry about it, though.
Just going to keep this one going, huh? Like you're like turning the knife just a little bit.
Through the whole World Cup.
I mean, the thing is, I would believe you. If you were like, oh, he had a 400, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Why not? I think he scored a goal or had a shot. Whatever. Rich Hunter scouting Nathan Ake, the 23-year-old Dutch defender for Bournemouth. Nathan Ake played the full 90 in Bournemouth's last home match, a 1-0 win over Swansea. Ake's solid performance epitomized an outstanding season for the young defender. He featured in all of the Cherries matches and secured a treasure trove of team awards following the match.
It's a great phrase.
Bournemouth manager Eddie Howe says he would not be surprised if there is interest in Ake this summer.
Why would you say that, Eddie Howe?
I think it will, because it'd be a little disingenuous to be like, no, nobody can have him. He's not good. Don't take him.
He's not good.
He's
Don't
mine.
Take him. Dan Martini is scouting Manuel Locatelli, the 20-year-old Italian midfielder for Milan. Dan says that after struggling to find minutes this season, Locatelli has started the last 2 Serie A matches for Milan, both of which they won. He then got the start in yesterday's Coppa Italia final. I didn't know that had happened. Which didn't go quite as well. Nevertheless, so now we know Milan did not win it, Dan thinks there will be offers for the youngster this summer.
4-0. 4-0 Juve. So another... It's not the Scudetto. What's it called when you win both in a row? I forget what it's called. Or both the cup and domestic. There's an Italian term for it that I've forgotten. There's a fancy Italian term that I should know and don't. But it's like the 3rd time they've done it under Max Allegri. Or 4th. He's a good coach, is what I'm saying. Steve Renard scouting Yuri Tielemans, the 20-year-old Belgian midfielder from Monaco. Monsieur Tielemans, I got fancy there,
nice.
Was back to starting from Monaco. This time,
if you think French things are fancy.
I do. This time in a more advanced position where he helped create Monaco's first goal in a 2-1 win over James Caan.
No.
Jimmy Caan. Tielemans
I'm going to say Cayenne. Because there's already a Cannes, like where the film festival is, right?
Yeah. Okay, that works. Wait, isn't that it, though? Oh, you're right. So
spelled differently.
Cayenne? Yeah. All right. I'm going to say Sunny. There we go, Sunny. Tielemans received the ball, played it wide, made a good run through the defense and received the return pass and took a shot from about 8 yards out that went off the post. However, Moussa Silla was there to collect the rebound and score his first of the day. He would then go on to get another one in that victory. But still, well done to Yuri.
John Youngblood is scouting Rio Rivaldo Griffiths, the 17-year-old English striker for Tottenham. John says, as if to keep making Darryl say his name, Rio Griffiths keeps making news. He finished the U18 campaign as the leading goalscorer with 26 goals for young Spurs this season, the Spursinos. John hopes that Spurs sign Rio Griffiths to a professional contract and either take him to the US in pre-season or loan him out for more game time.
JR, that was all, scouting Kobe Carr, 18-year-old American right back for the Houston Dynamo-ish. Kobe Carr joined the Brazos Valley Cavalry in the PDL as a defender for the 2018 season. Currently playing with the Houston Dynamo Youth U19 squad, Carr has scored 4 goals in 22 starts as a defender, so that's not too shabby. Following his summer in Brazos Valley, Carr will join Wake Forest University as the number 37 ranked recruit in the country, according to Top Drawer Soccer.
Andy Johnson is scouting Matt Real, the 18-year-old American left-back for the Philadelphia Union. After failing to feature in 3 consecutive matches for the Union, Real was sent back to the USL's Bethlehem Steel FC, where he started in the Steel's 3-1 victory over the Richmond Kickers. That was where Derek Jones was telling everybody where to be and what to do, right?
Yep.
It was a return-to-form performance as Real not only played 90 minutes of lockdown defence, but also scored the Steel's first goal with a blast to the bottom corner. I have an update on this as well. I believe Matt Real was selected to the under-20 men's national team squad.
All right. That will probably be a topic of discussion for next week. Specifically, the Top Drawer Soccer show for next week would be my guess. Tom Gaffney scouting James Sands, 17-year-old American defender for NYC FC. James is getting his first game action in months, playing for the US U19s at the Slovakia Cup. James played in Monday's 8-0 mauling of Kazakhstan and scored a goal in Tuesday's 2-1 win over Ukraine. The team can earn its place in the Slovakia Cup final on Thursday with a victory over the Czech Republic. I'm guessing that game has now happened.
Ron Howard voice, they didn't.
Really? They did not?
They're in the 3rd place game.
Oh,
they lost, yeah.
So they lost to Czechia?
Yeah,
is that happening still? Are they going to be Czechia?
It's happening. I don't think it's happened yet, but It's happening. Yeah, I say go for it.
All right.
Robert Newman is scouting Mason Mount, the 19-year-old English midfielder on loan at Vitesse from Chelsea. Robert says Mount was simply outstanding in Vitesse's Europa League qualification match against Den Haag. Mount scored 3 goals and added an assist in a 5-1 rout in the away leg, setting up an easy home leg. Additionally, it says easy knock on wood. I took it as like stage direction. Additionally, Mount earned a spot in the Eredivisie team of the season for his fine play all year. 9 goals and 8 assists in league play, being the most of any teenager in the league. Not bad for a player completing his first professional season.
Not bad at all.
Well done, Mason Mount. Speaking of Vitesse, have you seen the footage of the Matt Miazga goal that we were told about. He crosses himself in the run-up.
What do you really?
Like in a Catholic kind of way. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. So he crosses himself as the corner comes in. Then he runs up, heads the ball, and scores.
The power of cross compels him, apparently, into the air to win a header.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you to everybody for the scouting reports. If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show network, you will increase Taylor's base salary and his guaranteed compensation by going to totalsoccershow.com/join and supporting the show. We will then assign you a player if you email us, especially if you email us to hurry us up, to say, I am waiting for my player, tell me my player, why haven't you sent me my player yet? Mm-hmm. If you feel that way, please email us and I will get your player to you on Friday, I promise. Daryl at totalsoccershow.com.
It's a busy Friday for you.
I have a lot of admin.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. I really have circled it. I've got nothing else going on. I'm going to get stuff done.
It's a weird reality to live in when it's like, ooh, it's going to be admin day. And you're like legitimately like, going to get it done. Let's do this.
Admin day.
It's adulting.
No paperwork or computers. Mm-hmm. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Maybe I got you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Slice